Your focus is the health and well-being of your animals. Manufacturing safe and effective ingredients that help your animals thrive is APC's #1 priority.
Hello, my name is Jerry Frankel, President and CEO of APC. As the world's largest manufacturer of spray-dried red cells and plasma functional proteins, we take our industry leadership role seriously. Our commitment to biosafety includes significant investments in our manufacturing process. We collaborate with leading biosafety experts. We use validated multiple hurdle technologies that help us to provide the industries we serve with safe, pure beef and pure pork blood-derived products.
To understand how red cells and plasma are made, you first must understand the scale of livestock production and that the collection of blood is a crucial part of the global meat industry. APC only collects blood from officially inspected 100% single-species meat harvesting facilities, either pure beef or pure pork. As an example, in the United States, the average large-scale pork processing facility will process 15,000 hogs per day, while beef processing facilities will process 4,000 cattle per day. These meat harvesting facilities are officially inspected by the government authority responsible in each country and must comply with strict requirements to ensure a safe food supply, and that includes only using blood from healthy animals harvested for meat. Let's review the blood and plasma production process and biosafety steps in place at APC's manufacturing facilities. APC sources animal blood from officially inspected pure pork or pure beef facilities that is hygienically collected from healthy animals during the production of either beef or pork meat destined for human consumption. Blood or plasma is collected and prepared for further processing. The process starts in our dedicated processing room, where the collected blood arrives via enclosed stainless steel pipes. APC's process is very similar to how the dairy industry collects milk. Blood or plasma enters a fully closed system, where it passes through our filters, may be centrifuged to separate the blood fractions, is then chilled and held in our insulated stainless steel tanks for pickup by APC. The raw material is then transported in species-specific tankers to an APC production site for unloading and processing. Blood is spun at high speeds through a centrifuge, separating the plasma and red blood cells. APC technicians carefully monitor our computer-controlled systems throughout the process. At designated manufacturing facilities, pre-separated plasma is treated with ultraviolet photopurification, which is very similar to pasteurization commonly used in food production. The liquid plasma is then pumped into our spray dryer. In the spray dryer, excess water quickly evaporates and the liquid plasma is transformed into powder. The product is spray dried to a minimum 80 degrees Celsius throughout substance. The bulk powder is precisely measured and packaged in only brand new totes or 25 kg bags and placed on new pallets. Porcine plasma is then stored in environmentally controlled warehouses at 20 degrees Celsius for 14 days. The final step is quality testing products internally and through third-party verification prior to the product being released to our customers for use in animal diets. These multiple independent processing and safety steps all work together to ensure APC manufactures safe products for use in animal diets worldwide.
You can count on APC and our unwavering commitment to research, continuous investments in new technologies, and validated processing steps to ensure the safety of our ingredients. The APC team is here to help your business and animals thrive.
Swadika, good morning. Xin chào, Magandang umaga. My name is Rose Chidanwat. I'm going to be the moderator for the session today. Welcome everyone to the session by APC on evaluating market and production condition to maximize efficiency. Definitely today we have a lot of registrants around ASEAN joining in this session that is hosted by APC. I would like to have a little bit of housekeeping to all of you guys here. So for those from Vietnam, you can go to the channel of the interpretation and choosing to listen to our simultaneous translation. And for those who stay in English room, please stay here in the main room. During the Q&A, if you have any question for our Vietnamese friend, you can drop your question in the Q&A or chat box. Our interpreter will help to capture those questions. For today, the session is very clear that it's on the maximize the efficiency in the production of the pig production. There is a lot of movement returning to the market of many business already. From our side, Informa Markets and APC see that it is opportunity that we have a wrap up and a kick off that how is the market condition right now. And we believe that in the next quarter, there will be a picking up of the market as well, because people is now working towards returning and demand is coming back already. So right now I will brief a bit on the program today. We are going to be together about 1.5 hours. The first speaker will be Mr. Ramesh Subramaniam. He is going to tell you more about APC, and the team of APC is in this webinar as well. If anyone want to reach them, please just chat to the group of APC. The second speaker, he's from USA, from the APC Global Technical Service Director. He is Mr. Yan Bin Chen. He is going to talk on global pork outlook and production conditions as of now. So he will share his experience and knowledge on that. And our last speaker, she is the nutritionist from Australia, but she is staying in Vietnam. So meaning to say, she understands a lot on the condition, what's happening in Vietnam. She's going to talk about unlocking value and profits in Asian pig production in 2022. From the video you see earlier, it is a lot of focus on the safety of the products of APC. There is a pre-question about the product safety of APC. However, I could not answer better than the APC team. Right now, I lead you to the next, the first session of today, introduction of APC by Mr. Ramesh Subramaniam, the Director of Sales, Asia Pacific. Please, Ramesh.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. Can you hear me?
Very well. Yes.
Thank you. So good morning and welcome to this webinar organized in conjunction with Informa, looking at the current market scenario and how we can improve or give some tips in terms of improving the efficiency. So as we know, the African swine fever continues to be the biggest challenge for the industry. So in the last several webinars that we have organized, we have been focusing on bringing the latest information related to African swine fever and how we can cope with them. So today is also a scenario where we are also facing high feed ingredient cost. The economic scenario, as Rose mentioned, we have the COVID, we are just recovering and people have started going out and traveling outside the country. We also see consumption picking up. Because of COVID, the lockdown, we had seen that a lot of the consumption had come down, especially in Southeast Asia. The inflation is a reality and we have to manage with the current scenario. So the first speaker, Yan Bin, will give an overview about the raw material scenario, the ingredient scenario globally, the energy cost trends that's happening, the global pork production outlook, and how the cost of production differs in different scenarios, and ways to improve health and efficiency. So it's quite pertinent topic under the current scenario. And factors that we can control. There are several factors that we cannot control. COVID we cannot control, inflation we cannot control. These are global phenomena. But there are certain things like efficiency and nutritional strategies, and how we can reduce the losses, and what are the tools available to us to improve immunity and gut health. So Dr. Megan will today focus on some of the factors driving profitability, on sow productivity, on piglet quality, and overall different strategies on nutrition and health. So we have a very focused panel and topics to be discussed today. As we set the stage, I would like to take the next few minutes to give you an overview about who is APC and what we do as a business. APC is part of the Lauritsen Group. We have 7 companies under the group. The whole company is focused on animal nutrition or on food and health and on the biopharmaceutical solutions. APC was formed in the year 1981, and our global headquarters is based in Iowa in the US. We are currently the world's largest manufacturer of spray-dried plasma functional proteins. We have global reach in terms of marketing and technical support, both catering to the livestock and the agro businesses. Some things that you might be interested to know or useful information is in the year 2008, the American Society of Animal Science did a survey among the top nutritionists to identify what are the top 10 discoveries in the past 100 years in the swine nutrition. And it was found out that plasma in swine diet was ranked number 6, which shows how much of value plasma has been offering to the industry over the last 100 years. APC has 17 production facilities around the world. We will go through it. Where are the product coming from? APC is a founding member of the North American Spray-Dried Blood and Plasma Producers Association and also in the working group of the American Feed Industry Association. APC has been granted over 20 patents in the United States and Europe for the collection, processing, and feeding of blood and plasma proteins. All these have resulted in over 600 peer-reviewed journal articles on the safety, on the mode of action, and the efficacy of plasma across different species. All this has been possible because of our commitment to research and development. We have 2 research and development facilities. One is in the US and another is in the Europe. We also collaborate with some of the leading universities around the world to look at regionally what are the topics which are relevant for the region and do applied research. The products that we are going to cover today, of course, is on plasma. So we have pure 100% pure bovine or pure porcine plasma. We also have UV processed plasma. And the other product that we have is red cell or hemoglobin, spray-dried red cell or hemoglobin. The brand names are AP301 and AP301G is for the granulated product. And for plasma, it is AP920 or AP820. These are the products that are available in the Asian market. So if you look at the application of plasma, it's very well known that it goes in the early stage nutrition to improve immunity and to reduce the post-weaning stress. So the swine industry is the largest application for plasma for us. The other industry emerging sector that we see is in poultry in terms of the in the pre-starter phase in chicks for better immunity and survival. In aquaculture, we use the red cell, which is a highly digestible source of protein. And we also have started generating a lot of information on shrimps, how plasma can help in improving the survivability in shrimps. We have done data in, we have done some work in Thailand as well as in Vietnam. We have significant presence in the pet food side, the application in the wet pet food to enhance the gelling and emulsification property, and in the dry pet food as a superior functional ingredient. In case of the dairy sector, plasma is used in CMR diet in calf milk replacer to help to cope with diarrhea and to reduce cowing. Red cell is also used as a highly digestible source of protein. We also have an agro business. So we have natural biostimulants, which help in better root development and foliar development. In terms of production, as we mentioned, APC has manufacturing facilities around the world, which provide safe ASF-free. We bring products from ASF-free countries. The products which comes into the Asian market comes from United States, from Canada, from Spain, from Argentina, and we cater to 100% bovine or 100% porcine, depending on the regulatory requirements of each country in Asia. We are operating in the Asian market through our distribution partners and also directly. We have been present in the market for over 25 years, and we would like to thank all our partners and customers for their continued patronage. Our team, this is our team in Asia Pacific, spread across the region to help you support the business. You can also follow us, our information and latest technical updates through our social media channels. And please help and please reach to us if you need any more information or a copy of the presentation that you have going to listen today. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ramesh. This is a brief idea again on APC, but to the audience, if you want to have more detail, you can reach to Mr. Ramesh and his team. You can leave the email in the chat box during today's webinar as well. I cannot agree anymore that we have been working with APC, and APC bring a lot of good speaker, well-known speaker, update situation on ASF, how to handle high feed cost, economic scenario. Now, the factor is very important that we cannot do the things that we cannot control. So the session today, we are going to focus on what we can control in terms of the feed formulation and nutrition. So we are going to have the next two speakers to share with us on how APC can bring the efficiency to your formulation. The next speaker will be Mr. Yanbin Chen. He is the Global Technical Service Director from APC. He has experience working on the research and development and do a lot of technical service in USA, and he even worked with the global company like Cargill before. So his topic with us about 30 minutes will be on global pork outlook and production conditions. So please, Dr. Yanbin.
Yep. Let me share my slide.
Yes, your slide is on now.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for participating in this seminar. Today, I would like to talk to you a little bit about, as Ramesh mentioned, about the global pork outlook and some of the very current market conditions, and also a little bit about how do we improve our production efficiency to adapt to this challenging period of time we're facing. Now, here is the overall of today's topic. Some of my first few slides is gonna be about the global commodity market and global pork production outlook, and we'll talk about some opportunities and concerns. Then we can really focus our time on how do we improve our efficiency and profitability. I think the key pitch from my presentation is we need to really look at the health, improve the health. That's a main area that can help you to achieve that better efficiency and profitability. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit of how plasma going to help with health and a little bit of biosafety. So some of the current commodity market and the global production. Here's a chart about, actually two charts. On the top is the corn future price. This is from CBOT, Chicago Trading board, as you can see on top is corn, on bottom soybean. Both corn and soybean has the price of corn and soybean has increased dramatically in the last 2 years. And what we have learned over the last decade, it's the price of corn and beans, those two major basic grains for greens and oilseed for animal agriculture production are highly correlated to the crude oil or gasoline and diesel market, because as you all know, in a developed country like US, a majority of actually at least a third of the corn it's being used for ethanol production. And now new technology also allowed soy oil being used for biodiesel or renewable diesel production. So those two greens have a very clear relationship with the gasoline or diesel price. Or as we all know, you're filling up your pump, at least in the last a year or so, the gasoline price and diesel price has jumped quite significantly. That caused upper pressure for both corn and the soybean price, which of course is going to increase our production input cost. Of course, and also other agricultural commodities like wheat and sunflower, because of the Russia-Ukraine war, really constrained some of its supplies, and therefore it will keep those price at those commodity at the elevated level. So overall, we think that the increased cost of production, it's a case for every producers around the world. It's even worse for the producers who are in the region who needs to import a lot of grains. Unfortunately, Southeast Asia and Eastern Asia, because of the production, the nature of the production, we do import a lot of grains, corn, beans, or soybean meal from other regions. We got impacted a lot, so that caused it's a significant input for our production. If you look at the pork outlook, this is a chart I got from the USDA website. It really talks about the U.S. commercial pork production over the last decade and did a prediction for 2022 and 2023. As you can see, and this is in billions of pounds. So this is basically how much pork is produced in the USA over the last decade, from 2010 all the way to today. As you can see, in the past decade, USA has enjoyed a really steady growth of pork production in the last decade. The only hiccup is the 2013-14 PEDV outbreak, but in general, we have increased our production significantly over the last decade. However, if you look at the projection for this year of 2022, USDA is projecting we're going to only produce 27.1 billion pounds of pork, which is about 1.2 billion pounds lower than 2020 number. So we're producing less than 2 years ago. And the main reason for that is, in the US, we're seeing this new PRRS outbreak, which is really bad respiratory and reproductive challenge for the sows. And also post-winter E. coli in the nursery, which is gut health or GI tract issues for the baby pigs. Of course, sow mortality are increasing, and there are labor issues. So those are major issues for the U.S. pork production, and that is the reason why we're seeing the projected production level in 2022 will drop significantly. If you look at the U.S. pork export, this is again from USDA's website. It's projecting this year the export will slow down, and it will actually decrease by about 7% than 2021 level. And the main reason is, of course, we all know the China situation. The pork price in China has been very, very low for the last after the new year or even before the new year has been way below the cost production. Although in the recent few weeks it has come up, but the slowdown. U.S. did see a slowdown of pork going to China. Of course, another reason is strong dollar. The dollar is very strong. So basically, the pork importer countries can, competitively choose pork from, for example, European Union or South American compared to USA. So export from US will also slow down a little bit this year as well. And if you look at the global kind of consumption or demand, the pork, even though we have high inflation, the economics are not at the best, at least. But if you look at the pork consumption, it remains pretty good. And one of the indicators you can look at is Japanese pork import. As a major pork import country, Japan imports a lot of pork from different countries. So if you look at the import number reported by Japanese custom for the first quarter of 2021 and first quarter of 2022, in terms of metric ton imported, actually Japan imported more pork this year than last year. If you look at the consumption data from Japan, the pork consumption actually stayed very stable during the COVID, actually increased in the COVID year because
Hello, Yan Bin. So ladies and gentlemen, please hang on a bit. We are getting Mr. Yan Bin back. There must be some technical on the internet. So please bear with us. He is coming back soon. So apologize for this inconvenience. So Dr. Yan Bin is coming back now. All right. Okay, Dr. Yan Bin. Can you unmute, please?
Yeah, sorry about the lost connection. I guess my internet didn't cooperate. It's good to have a technology like this, but it's bad when they don't work, right?
Yeah. So the slide now it's on the peak consumption, peak demand. Can you share the slide?
Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, doctor.
Yeah. For some reasons, keeping kicking me out. Let me share my slide again.
Yes.
Okay. So if you look at China, it's very interesting dynamic in the past 6 months. So after the new year, we really see the hog price hit historical low. And if you look at RMB, they reached about 12 RMB per kilo. That's way below their cost of production. But over the last month or so, the pork price has steadily increased. Now the price actually are reaching to 22 RMB per kilo. And also because of improvement in health, in that liquidation of cells and getting rid of the low efficiency production, improvement of the health, the big producers and also the small producers actually have been able to increase their cost production or decrease their cost production from 20 to about 18 RMBs, despite a high feed cost. So at this level, the Chinese pig producers are making money, and because their prices are pushing up, their prices are going up, which means and they import a lot of pork around the globe. We will see the global pork price going to increase. We're seeing that in Vietnam. We're seeing that in the Philippines. I think that this higher pork price will remain and will be seen in the second half of 2022. Well, if you look at our cost of production, I just a very quick and brief comparison between, for example, United States, the cost of production versus some of the farms in Asia Pacific, to point out, where is our disadvantage in Southeast Asia? Where can we improve? Of course, the cost of production are very different. For example, the feed cost, it's relatively, much lower in the United States. The winter pig cost is also much lower in the United States. Therefore, the overall cost of production are quite low. For Asian Pacific, whether you are a small farm buying feed or integrators, your cost, integrator will have a lower cost for their piglet because they don't need to really purchase the piglet. They only need to cover the cost of production. So it's a lower cost on that, and also the feed cost is lower. But overall, compared to USA, those two are still quite high. On the other side, it's this feed cost. We, as a nutritionist, as a feed manufacturer, we try to lower that cost as much as we can. But at some point, you're gonna get what you pay for your feed, right? You pay a lower price for the feed, well, then probably the energy level is not there. So overall, there's only so much you can do with the feed cost. We're not gonna, ever be able to be really competitive on feed cost side versus, for example, USA. But there's a part of the production we can, significantly improve our efficiency and reduce our cost, and that is the death loss. Remarkably, through my experiences with some of the large integrators in the Asia Pacific area, especially in China, we have seen the large integrators on average, they actually have a pretty high death loss, that which those death loss contribute a large loss in terms of dollar per head for their whole system. So, and if you compare those numbers versus the US numbers, and they are very, very high, and we can do something to reduce that and therefore to improve our efficiency and improve our profitability. So I think about the challenge and opportunity, what we see is food inflation will reduce the demand, but also but I think the greater impact there will be on higher price meat. For example, like beef, the demand for pork remains pretty strong. And of course, the raising cost has significant impact on all regions, but more particularly for Asia Pacific, it has much more, significance for this market as well. However, we do think the healthy production systems in Asia Pacific will remain profitable. One of the key elements to maintain profitable is you have to have a good control on your health program. You have to reduce your death loss. Of course, ASF prevention and control are going to be a key. in our region because most of the region are ASF positive. Now, another thing we have to remind ourselves is we have to do the basics to maintain the respiratory health and gut health as well. Because a lot of time what we see in the last 2 years in some of the production companies, we put a lot of effort in preventing ASF while ASF got controlled, but then the respiratory health and gut health became much bigger issue and caused a lot of death loss as well. So we have to ASF control, but in the meanwhile, we have to do the basic health program as well. Of course, we know plasma protein as a feed additive and ingredient has profound impact on immunity, gut health, and respiratory health, and therefore, by applying this, plasma protein in the early nursery, improve health and improve profitability. In the next few slides, I will show you some of the data we have accumulated in the last 30 years on the health impact of plasma. Number one, I would like to talk to you about the respiratory health. This is a study we did in Canada in 2006. It was published in 2007. 2016, it was published by Dr. Cronshaw in 2017. And this is a trial we did in the nursery. The nursery we did, and the nursery pigs came in. They all, were positive for PRRS viruses. As we all know, for nursery pig, if they're PRRS positive, there's a lot of pressure on the respiratory, tract, and also cause, high death loss as well. So in this, this is research trial with the PRRS positive nursery pig. We basically did a very simple comparison between two feed programs. Alternative program and plasma program. The plasma program has a very simple formulation, concept, and basically 5% plasma in phase 1, 2.5% in phase 2, and third phase, both program has the same feed. And all those programs are medicated with high zinc oxide, very typical commercial program. So we look at those nursery. We used about 960 pig in the trial, so it's a very good replicated trial. Can tell us a lot of things. We look at body weight very clearly by using plasma. You're gonna see a better body weight, better gain. We have about 800 grams better gain at end of nursery. But more importantly, for the customer and also for us, we saw a very significant reduction in mortality, about 40% reduction in mortality. And this is a clear indication that by feeding plasma, we're actually impacting the respiratory health and helping pigs for respiratory challenges. This is another study we did years ago in Spain, which we, in this study, we also have a very simple comparison, 2 feed program, no plasma in starter diet, or have a 6% plasma in a starter diet for 2 weeks. And then we followed the pigs all the way to the market to look at the impact of just feeding plasma for those 2 weeks, that impact on the whole life cycle, productivity and health, and etc. So this is the overall data at the end of the at the end of the study. So if you look at the window finishing survivability, we significantly increased window finishing survivability by about 6%. Of course, the growth was improved. At the end of the study, the carcass weight we collected at the slaughterhouse, we had about 2.7 kilos heavier pigs than the control. So very clear, health benefit by feeding plasma for 2 weeks. And in this particular trial, we actually have the data break out in different spaces so that we can understand when does the mortality happen and what was the cost for mortality. So as I mentioned, the plasma feeding period was only for the first 2 weeks. Then we tracked all the pigs, and then for the rest of their production stage, they all, both control and plasma pigs, all got fed the same feed, for those different phases. So, and when we look at the mortality differences, the main mortality differences we actually observed, it's between day 14 to day 48, which is after we fed the pigs with plasma. And also when we look at what was the cause for the mortality, and the lab basically determined the majority of the mortality was associated with bacterial pneumonia. Again, the respiratory issue they were facing. But this data clearly show that feeding plasma for 6% in the first 2 weeks had a long-term impact on the respiratory health, helping pigs for bacterial pneumonia type of challenges as well. We have recently finished the study in Brazil, and this was just published and presented at the 2022 IPVS in Brazil. This study is also quite interesting because we did a titration study in the early nursery at different levels. I'm not, because of time, I'm not going to go into details about the setups, but it's the same titration of at different levels in the early nursery. But then we traced the pig all the way to the market at the age of 166 days, and we look at their body weight. As you can see, by increasing plasma level, their final body weight got increased quite significantly. The best level we're achieving is at treatment 4. Higher plasma usage in the early nursery resulted in about 3.7 kilos heavier market weight. But also what's more interesting is at the slaughterhouse, the professor actually went out and looked at the lungs of the slaughtered pig and measured the lesion index. For example, for control, the lesion index for control was at 2.2. Any level of plasma in the early nursery also significantly reduced the lung lesion score, even at the slaughter. So another clear indication the long-term health benefit of adding plasma in the early nursery phases had on the long-term respiratory health. Of course, gut health. Gut health, we have a lot of data on gut health. Over the last year in the USA, as I mentioned in the earlier slides, in 2021, and we see, we have in the US, we have experienced a resurgence of E. coli cases, and this is the data from Iowa State Van Buren Detection Lab. Here you can see in 2020 versus 2021, the reported E. coli cases got increased about 460%. So we're seeing this E. coli resurging in the US. Then why does this matter? For example, for Asia or South Japan or Southeast Asia? Well, I have to tell you a little bit of the background why we're seeing that E. coli resurgent in the US. I think the industry has concluded the reason why we or suspected the reason why we are seeing this resurgence of E. coli cases in the US is because at least partially because of we're starting to change our genetic lines in the last 2 years by the requested by the Packer. We're using in the US. In the past, we used a lot of synthetic lines and because it has better efficiency and better growth. But in the last 2 years, because of the concerns about the meat quality, the large US packers has started to request pig producer to use a Duroc sire. So basically, became a they were requesting all the pig producers to at least provide them pigs has using Duroc Siemens. And if you look at the literature, it's quite clear. Some of the Duroc lines has high prevalence of F18 E. coli receptors. So they are more receptible for this E. coli challenge. Well, why that's important for Asia Pacific? It's because if you look at our genetic pool or genetic lines in Southeast Asia or East Asia, a lot of our producers are using Duroc landrace large white 3-week crossbred. And it's very, very typical in East Asia and Southeast Asia. Because of this genetic composition, we actually think the pigs in Southeast Asia are quite susceptible for E. coli, and there's some data in the literature suggesting that's true. So we think this E. coli issue, although we don't talk about it a lot, but it's actually a pretty high risk for our region. Of course, E. coli is mainly a GI issue. Enteric problem. Therefore, nutrition can certainly play a very important role. A common strategy to control, diarrhea or E. coli issue is lower the undigested protein going to the hang gut. So basically, take out the nutrient that can help E. coli to grow or repopulate, right? If you look at this strategy and look at the data published in the literature for winter pigs, they tend to have a lower digestibility than grower pig, especially for vegetable protein. If you look at the data from University of Illinois, especially for example soybean or some vegetable proteins, they do have about 10% lower digestibility in winter pigs than grower pigs. So if you look at those data, you would naturally conclude in these winter pigs, the undigested proteins, especially from vegetable proteins, are going to be a problem. So one way to solve this is try to use higher, highly digestible ingredient in the winter pig diet. For example, plasma, fish meal, those highly digestible animal protein, historically has been showing can provide that protection for the GI tract. Of course, supplement, well-proven supplement can also help with the issue. We know plasma, we have a lot of data on plasma, we can show you to help with the issue. And also the zinc oxide is a very good tool to use. Of course, in our region, different countries have different regulation on zinc oxide about the levels. Some of you guys cannot use really high levels to control E. coli. Therefore, in this case, we think you probably need to have a higher plasma inclusion. Well, as I mentioned, we have a lot of good studies on E. coli challenged studies. As you can see, we have challenged the pigs with F18, K88, K99, E. coli. And in those cases, if we compare the plasma group versus control group, we always see better growth, reduced diarrhea, reduced mortality, reduced inflammation. So plasma is a very, very effective tool for E. coli and GI tract issue. This is one of the study, just want to show you. This study compared the control, plasma, and zinc oxide in pigs that were challenged with K88. As you can see, the fecal consistency were improved by both plasma and zinc oxide. And also the percentage of pig are excreting that were still excreting K88 7 days after challenge was significantly improved by plasma and also zinc oxide. But more importantly, look at the mortality. The control group had about 40% mortality, while plasma only had 6.6% mortality versus zinc oxide had 13.3% mortality. We all know zinc oxide is a very effective tool for E. coli, post-weaning diarrhea, and mortality. This data also shows plasma can, it's also a very effective tool and can partially replace zinc oxide. In Europe, they actually have removed the zinc oxide at the end of last month. There were great discussions how we're gonna deal with pigs, winter pigs without zinc oxide. And there are great abstract and data published by Danish Producer Association, suggesting plasma is a very effective tool to help pigs without zinc oxide. Another thing I want to share with you really quickly is about the ASF vaccine data. This is very exciting because we know in Southeast Asia, Vietnam has approved one commercial vaccine for their producers. In Europe, there are several vaccine candidates. The European countries and companies are developing. And we were very fortunate to have an opportunity to collaborate with Spanish government on looking at one of the vaccines. The objective of our research was look at does a different feeding program improve the vaccine efficacy. This is the data this is the data we got from that trial. It was just presented again at the IPVS in 2022 in Brazil. This is how the study was set up. It's quite interesting. We have basically two groups of pigs. Control group, those pigs were fed with control diet. Then plasma group, the plasma fed about plasma diet, which had about 8% plasma in their diet. So two group, same genetic pigs. Only differences between those pigs are dietary differences, control versus plasma. And after weaning, those pigs were accumulated at the external farm and then brought on into this Biosecurity 3 lab in Crasa, Spain. And in this lab, we gave them another 10 days to get familiar with the environment. And 10 days later, at the beginning of the study, we gave the ASF vaccine intranasally to both groups at 2 mL at the 10 to the 5th PFU. We gave both groups same dose vaccines. So we allowed the pigs stay in the pens for about 19 days. On the separate group we call Trojan pigs. The Trojan pigs, those Trojan pigs were not vaccinated, and they were not vaccinated on day 19. We injected those Trojan pigs with a wild type ASF virus, and after we injected them, we observed those Trojan pigs for 2 days. In day 21, we saw the Trojan pig get infected. They started to see developing clinical sign. Then we put the Trojan pig, back to the pens. So back to the group 1 pens and group 2 pens. So both groups got those Trojan pigs. So they were not exposed with ASF infected pigs, starting from day 21. And then we let the pigs stay in the same pen for another 20 days. At day 41, we euthanized all the pigs to look at how this different diet improved or impacted the vaccine efficacy. So this is a very, very key data point. As you can see, the Trojan pig, after we gave them the ASF virus, all of them have infections. This value on this table is the CT values in the different lymph tissues once we finish the study or when the pig died. As you can see, both control diet and plasma diet, the Trojan pig all developed the high infections because the CT value are very, very low. Again, the lower the CT value is, the higher the viral load is in those tissues. As you can see, the Trojans are all in the red regions. They are all developing a highly effective ASF. And in the control diet, as you can see, some of the pigs get infected. In some pigs, the CT value are quite low. So about, at least 70% of the pig are getting infected. But those pigs didn't die, after being exposed with ASF. So the vaccine actually worked to protect them from dying, but did not protect them from getting infected. However, if you look at the plasma diet, none of the pigs from the plasma group even get infected. So this is suggesting by feeding plasma really improved the efficacy of the vaccine so that none of the pigs in the pen even get infected with ASF. So as we look at this data and the news that Vietnam has approved one of the first commercial ASF vaccine, we thought when producers are starting to vaccinating their pigs, adding plasma or adding a special plasma diet during that vaccine period could significantly improve the efficacy of that vaccine producer are going to use. Another thing about really briefly go over is the biosafety research. As you guys have seen in the video previously in APC, we offer our customer options. We have 100% pork plasma and 100% bovine plasma that we offer to our Asia Pacific customers. We also use multiple hurdle mitigation technology in our production process to ensure the safety of both pork and the bovine plasma. And in short, basically we have 3 redundant, separate individual kill steps that will help us to basically mitigate the risk or kill the viruses or bacteria of concern. UVC treatment, spray drying, post-drying storage. Those 3 steps has been independently studied and validated as a very effective kill step for the viruses or bacteria of concern. Each step will kill the virus. We use 3 steps to provide redundancy to ensure the safety of the product. And over the last 2 years, we have engaged some third party, like the University of Minnesota, to give to do a risk assessment of our production. The bottom line from that risk assessment from University of Minnesota Veterinary School is spray dry, post dry treatment, heat treatment, and UV has sufficient inactivation for all the viruses being evaluated and at their all calculated scenarios. So the product through our production process is safe. European Union also did their own risk assessment for the safety of the feed and feed ingredient. And they look at a different feed ingredient, try to look at which one has higher risk, which one has a lower risk in terms of ASF transmissions in European Union. As you can see on the right figure, they have a lot of different ingredient and feed additive being evaluated. But the bottom line is the conclusion is the hydrolyzed protein and the blood product rank the lowest regardless of origin or destiny. So they rank the lowest for their risk because of the mitigation steps we took during our manufacturing process. So in summary, global pork demand remains strong for 2022. Rising cost has significantly impacted all regions, but particularly for Asia Pacific regions. So we have to do better to improve our efficiency. But we do think healthy production system, if you can reduce your death loss, improve your health, you will remain profitable. We have to do better on ASF prevention control that include the conservation to use the vaccine. We have to improve our respiratory health and gut health, and plasma protein improve both gut health and respiratory health, and therefore improve profitability. For our product, we use multiple mitigation hurdles in our production process to ensure the safety of product. and we have third-party verification that the process is indeed valid and then the product is safe by both University of Minnesota and the European Food Safety agencies. Both concluded plasma is a safe ingredient for producer to use. I think that's it. Thank you. I'm sorry we had a little bit hiccup on the internet, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Yan Bin. I could not open the video. The host stopped my video. Just wait for a moment. All right. So right now, I have been hearing a lot of study from Dr. Yan Bin. Dr. Yan Bin, that is the question on the integrator. What does it mean by integrator? You can answer on the chat or later on from our Vietnamese friend. The next session will be with Dr. Megan Edwards. She is the animal nutrition consultant, which is staying in Hoi An, and she is from Australian, and she is working a lot in Vietnam market, and she has a lot of consultant service at Animal Nutrition Consultant Integral. Yeah, so right now Dr. Megan is with me, so she is going to cover another 30 minutes on unlocking value and profits in Asian pig production in 2022. Dr. Megan, I give the stage to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to APC for inviting me here today. So I'm just going to touch on some of the key parameters that we can focus in on as a profit driver during these particularly challenging times. But before we get started, I just want to set the scene. And as you know, we have come through the worst of ASF throughout Asia, and it's a reality now that for most of us, it will remain endemic as a disease. And we've upskilled ourselves as an industry and are now able to cope and live with ASF. However, the struggles that we've been through have resulted in improved biosecurity, and they also deliver benefits beyond ASF and will be useful in the future for the next disease challenge. We've seen a lot of market consolidation occur in the last 2 to 3 years, and this is driven by many factors. And when we have market consolidation, there's always a risk that pork becomes a commodity. And there's obviously pros and cons to that. With the market consolidation, there's generally economy of scale, and we get this greater control over being able to control the cost of production, which is an advantage when you have challenging times like we have right now. We've also seen during the pandemic and the shift towards online shopping that we have this increased opportunity for branded product or niche marketing opportunities. One challenge that continues to haunt us is it's still difficult to access genetic stock, and this is particularly the case for the smaller players in the market. For those that are in a position to re-enter the market after ASF or are wanting to expand, it is difficult to access good quality genetic stock. But hopefully that will improve in the near future. There's also this new need for greater skill, particularly in gilt development. The result of ASF has forced us to turn to in-house genetics programs. And the challenge has been that for many of us, gilt development and gilt management is a new focus, and it's quite different to finishing pig production. It requires a different skill set, a lot of patience, and a very long vision. At the moment, we have extremely high feed prices, and it's quite unique. But the good news is that in general, most Asian markets are quite open-minded to alternative raw materials, and they are willing and able to use almost anything. The other challenge we have is the competition between industries. So as mentioned by Yanbin, we have this competition with the biofuels industry, but we also have competition within the pig, poultry, aqua and dairy industries. The reality is, with the situation in Ukraine, we're playing the long game. The consequences of the war will remain with us for a long time. And we know that we probably have to accept high feed prices for at least 18 months. At the moment, we have modest pork prices, and for some markets like the Philippines, they're actually quite good pork prices. And for most of the players in the region, including the Chinese, at the moment, it is profitable to be a pig farmer. So now is the time to make smart decisions, review what you're doing, and make the most of the opportunities. It's better to do it now than to wait until the profits erode. The good news is that pork consumption or animal protein consumption is predicted to increase, not just here in Asia, but globally. And the rise in Asia will continue to rise as GDP rises. So the pandemic has, of course, put a few brakes on, and the inflation is going to cause us a bit of pain. But in general, the long-term trend is upward. We also have some new players in the protein sector with meat alternatives becoming increasingly popular in the media. But the reality is that these increased consumption of meat alternatives doesn't seem to be having much impact on the actual consumption of animal protein. There seems to be plenty of space in the market for both of these types of commodities. So we're in the business of producing pork, and the reality is that if we're going to remain profitable long term, we have to focus in on the profit drivers during the difficult times. And the profit drivers that I'm going to speak about today are sow productivity, piglet quality and health. And all of these factors, when managed well, can increase the kilograms of pork and also help to reduce the cost per kilogram of pork produced. So just to highlight the point, this is some really good data that shows you about productivity. So over on the top left, we have the number of pigs born in a lifetime based on the number of piglets that the gilt has in her first litter. So if the gilt gives birth to a small litter of 7 piglets or less, she's only predicted to produce 41 piglets in her lifetime. Whereas if she's able to produce 15 piglets in her first litter, she's more likely to give us 67 piglets born alive in her lifetime. Down the bottom, if we express that as PSY, which is a more common parameter for many of us, what you can see is that if a gilt is only giving 7 piglets in her first litter, she's likely to have a PSY around 20. But if she's able to give us more than 15 pigs per sow per year, 15 piglets in her first litter, she's going to have a PSY above 31. On the top right here, you can see the same data expressed on a lifetime pigs weaned. So we can get around 11 piglets more weaned out of a sow, which is almost a whole litter, if we can boost up her firstborn performance from 7 up to 15. And the good news is if the gilt is going to have a large first litter, so 12 or more piglets, she's going to remain in the herd for longer. So gilt preparation is essential. It needs to be done well. It's not a race like it is with slaughter pigs. The gilts need to be grown slowly and carefully, or modestly and carefully. And we need to think about things like udder development, uterine capacity, the health, bone density, etc., so that that gilt is able to perform well, not only in its first litter, but throughout its productive life. Now, the research that's been done in sows in relation to plasma is very promising. So this data here is looking at using plasma in the peri-farrowing period. It's at a low dose of either 0.5 or 2.5%. And what it's showing us is that by using plasma, we can improve the number of pigs born alive for both the entire sow herd, or in particular for parity 1 sows. And as I just showed you in the previous slide, boosting the performance of parity 1 sows in terms of born alive pays off significantly in the whole of life performance. And just to give you some perspective, because plasma, of course, is an expensive ingredient on a per kilogram basis, but it's a very valuable ingredient. And if you were to apply it like they did in this study, which was done in a commercial farm, the investment to provide the sows with plasma for the 11 days around farrowing was about $1 per sow if it was provided at this inclusion rate of 0.5%. But if you went for the higher dose of 2.5%, it was an investment of around $5 per sow. But for this $5 or the $1 you're able to get around 0.8 of an extra piglet born alive in the first litter. And of course, this doesn't account for all the additional benefits you would get in subsequent litters. And given the current price of a piglet, this is a very good ROI. Now, the next area that I think needs more focus as we move forward as an industry is related to colostrum intake and colostrum quality. Getting a high number of pigs born alive is a good achievement, but then we need to make sure that they consume adequate colostrum. And there's a clear relationship between the colostrum intake and the weaning weight. So this data here showed that if the piglet consumed around 200 grams or less, it was likely to have a weaning weight of 6 kilos, where if the same piglet was offered 350 grams of colostrum in the first 24 hours, it was much more likely to be an 8-kilo weaner. So looking at strategies to boost colostrum volume and also ensure that there is even access to colostrum within the litter is a very good way to improve the suckling pig performance. And of course, any weight advantage that we can obtain at weaning will obviously be multiplied by the time it reaches market. Now, the interesting thing about this study was that this growth rate relative to colostrum intake was independent of birth weight. So whether the piglet was born 1.1 kilos or 1.4 kilos, as long as they got a high intake of colostrum, they had a good chance to reach an 8-kilo weaning weight. Now, the data on the right is a similar study that looked at the litter growth in the first 24 hours, and it's based on the average piglet colostrum intake. So if the colostrum intake was low, the litter didn't really grow. The first 170 grams of colostrum is only really meeting the maintenance requirements. And then if we can reach what we would consider to be a target colostrum intake of around 250, we can expect a litter growth of around 900 grams for the first 24 hours. And if we can boost the colostrum intake up above 300, then we can expect very nice litter growth rates of 1.4 kilos. The research that's been done over the last 15 years by APC into the benefits that plasma can have on productivity is consistent, and it's exciting, and it's great that APC have chosen to invest so heavily in understanding their product and the benefits and the value it can bring. This table here just summarizes briefly the types of improvements we can see. So by using plasma, we can expect to get more piglets born alive, more piglets weaned at the ideal weight, a reduction in stillbirths, and increased productivity in subsequent litters. And the reality is that the youngest sows in the herd, so the gilts and parity 1 sows, struggle the most with the stresses of reproduction. And that's for a range of reasons, but it's also because they're new to the stresses and challenges of reproduction. And secondly, because they're still young and they're growing themselves. And the benefits of plasma to these younger sows seems to be even greater than it is for the older sows, but there is clear evidence that even for older sows, there are benefits. Now, we can't control the cost of feed, and it is definitely rising, but we can have a positive influence on sow productivity. And this table I've created here is looking at the feed cost associated with producing a piglet. So over here, I've got the feed expressed on a cost per tonne basis. The next column is the cost per sow per year basis, with the assumption that a sow is eating 1.2 tonne of feed per year. And then across here, I've got different reproductive outputs. So whether she has a PSY of 20 and goes up to 30. So you can see here that if we have a low performing sow that's only giving us 20 piglets per sow per year, if the feed price was $450 per tonne, the feed cost, so this doesn't include the fixed cost, but the feed cost to produce each piglet would be $27 US. But if I was able to get a much more productive sow in my herd, that cost would go down to around $18. Now, the impact of increasing feed costs is significant. So here we're going up as we go up $100 a tonne, we're going up in the price of the piglet by about $6 per piglet. But if we have a more productive sow, the increase is less significant. And of course, the average cost to produce that piglet is significantly lower. So making efforts within your farm to select the most productive sows, and it may be that you need to transiently decrease the number of sows, cull out the worst performing sows on the farm in the short term. So because if you cull the lowest 10% of your sows, you don't necessarily reduce your output by 10% because you're culling the underperformers. And this is one economic strategy that is quite useful during difficult times. Now, another consideration, and Yanbin has already touched on this, is using plasma to enhance the vaccine response and the health and performance of pigs from weaning through to market. This was a study that Yanbin has also showed you, looking at piglets that were offered 6% plasma for the first 2 weeks after weaning when vaccinations were done. And then they followed the pigs through to market. And what you can see here is that when we vaccinate pigs, we definitely end up with a weight advantage. Here it's around 3 kilos. But if we vaccinate the pigs and feed them plasma, we can get an additional 3 kilos per pig on top of that. So just to look at the economics of this, I've summarized the results in the table below. And here you can see, first of all, that plasma has a very nice effect on mortality, much more so than the vaccination itself. And what we see here is based on the number of pigs that survive through to market, multiplied out by the average weight. I've calculated out the kilos of pork that were produced in each of the treatments. And down here, you can see the increase in the kilos of pork. So by vaccinating the pigs, there was an extra 150 kilos of pork produced. But if I offered plasma, I was able to increase the kilos of pork by 700 or 800 kilos. The average cost of the vaccination that was used in the publication is about $1 per pig. And then in the case of the plasma, I calculated out the cost based on the feed intake in those first 2 weeks. So you can see that there is around $150 worth of investment in the best performing treatment where they combine vaccination and plasma. But we're able to get an additional 870 kilos of pork. And given that the current market situation is that pork is profitable, you can imagine the ROI on this situation is very, very good. So this is just one study looking at a combination vaccine. But there is increasing evidence within the published literature to show that plasma can have a positive effect on a whole range of pathogens. And so far, the list includes things like E. coli, PEDV, circovirus, and as Yanbin just shared, ASF. Now, the next topic I briefly want to touch on is asking yourself to look at the value of feed additives rather than the price of feed. And that is because it's very tempting when the situation gets tough to want to take out feed additives, particularly feed additives that don't have a nutritional matrix. But the reality is that you put the feed additive in there for a reason, and that reason is normally something that is costing you money. So if you're willing to take out the additive, are you willing to accept the economic consequences? And here I just want to share one example, and it's a very simple example, but this was a study where they were growing pigs out from 30 kilos to market, and they were either offered control diet or a diet that contained organic acids. And what we see here is that when they used the organic acids, there was a nice reduction in feed conversion efficiency and a significant increase in the slaughter weight, so an extra 4 kilos of slaughter weight. Now, down the bottom, I've calculated out the economics of that only consider the feed costs here. But if the feed was $400 or $450 or $500 per ton, and then the cost of the particular organic acid that was used, and you can see there that by paying for the organic acid and getting the improvement in performance, it actually lowered the cost of production. So if I was to take out the organic acid, I would reduce the feed costs, but I wouldn't reduce the cost to produce a kilo of pork. And so that is important, that the decisions you make need to be focused around the cost to produce a kilo of pork rather than the cost per ton of feed. Now, there's lots of silver linings that have come out of ASF, and the market consolidation is something that I spoke about earlier. So what we're left with is mainly medium and large producers. Some small producers may opportunistically come back, but for now, the market will be largely made up of medium and large players. So what we do see is we see a shift in the type of producer. So the typical farmer who inherited the farm from his father or his grandfather, and it was just a way of life. Many of those have exited the industry, and we're left with what are ultimately businessmen or businesswomen. And this has some benefits because we see improvements in the production systems. We see better biosecurity. In general, we should see better productivity because we have better genetics left on the ground. And we also have a bit of commoditization, which puts more financial pressure on the market and forces companies to look more carefully at how they run their business. And there was a very interesting study looking at the impact of things like African swine fever on the profiles of the producers that are left within an industry. It was a Chinese study that's been done in China. And what it found is that it's a bit of a survival of the fittest exercise. And ultimately, when we have challenges in our lives, and African swine fever was definitely a challenge, what we see is that those that come out the other end of the challenge are more resilient and more risk tolerant. And this allows those producers to be better prepared for the next round of challenges that's going to come their way. So whilst it hasn't been fun to experience ASF, those of us who are left here today at the other end of the experience, we're better off for the experience, and we will have the skills to cope with the next challenge from what we've learned during this challenge. It's also important to remember that we are blessed with the fact that pigs are opportunistic omnivores, and whilst we have very high feed prices, we have lots of different options available to feed these pigs. And generally in Asia, people are very open-minded to alternative raw materials, and we should be considering all options. However, when you consider them, you need to think about some of the strengths and weaknesses around the alternatives. Do they have anti-nutritional factors? Are there any issues with palatability? Are there issues with storage and spoilage? Or are there additional functional values that aren't accounted for in the matrix value? It's also important to remember that pigs don't have requirements for corn and soy. What they have requirements for is net energy and digestible amino acids and available or digestible phosphorus. And we have the opportunity to provide those nutrients in a range of different combinations. In the last few years, as times have got tougher and more interesting, we're forced to be more creative, and some examples of products that I've began to use in the more recent past are things like mushroom stems, sesame meal, fermentation byproducts. So cassava residue with citric acid is one that's increasingly popular in Thailand. We also have brewers byproducts. We're competing obviously against the ruminant sector for those, but they are available. We have bakery byproducts that are coming in from overseas. We also have some nut byproducts. So there's things like cashew nut meal that are available. And then we also have some alternative proteins like the insect products. And one that's useful for monogastrics is the insect oil. So some tips that I have for navigating 2022. First of all, I would suggest that you ensure that you're optimizing the way that you use phytase. It is the enzyme that can bring the most economic relief. And at the moment, with the very high price of inorganic phosphorus, it's time to ensure that you're using it to its full potential. So making sure that you know how much phytate phosphorus you have, so the amount of substrate, and then looking at the matrix that you should use, remembering that it's a non-linear matrix. So if you do decide to change your dose, you'll need to make sure that you have the correct matrix values. Another solution that I'm currently using is to look at using emulsifiers to unlock additional energy. And this is an opportunity if you have more than 4% crude fat in your diet. And it does work on almost any fat source with the exception of coconut oil. And then you'll need to look at the type of matrix that you're willing to use and how you might combine that matrix with the other matrix values you have for things like enzymes. In my personal opinion, fat digestion can be improved in the order of 1 to 2%. So there is room to have an energy value or an energy matrix for the emulsifier as long as you have enough substrate and the pigs are over 15 kilos of live weight. There's also some opportunity to look at adjusting the energy density of the diets. And this is because pigs are able to adjust their appetite within reason. As long as we maintain the energy to the lysine to energy ratio, the pigs are able to cope if we adjust the density of the diet. And this can be one way to balance costs. So obviously energy is the most expensive nutrient in the diet. So by reducing the energy slightly, this can help to reduce the cost per ton of feed, but of course you need to account for the cost associated with the increased feed intake or the cost associated with the increased logistics. It's also important to remember that the lowest FCR doesn't always give us the lowest cost of production, and sometimes it can be interesting to compromise a little bit on FCR to use a lower costing ingredient. It's also important, and one thing that I think has great room for improvement in Asia is the types of feeding programs we use. Over on the right side of the screen, you can see a diagram that compares a 6-phase to a 2-phase feeding program, and you can see how much nutrient wastage occurs with a 2-phase feeding program. Now, I'm not necessarily suggesting that you need 6 phases, but I definitely think we need more than 2. There's also money to be made in split-sex feeding or the option to use immunocastration to take advantage of the efficiency of growth of entire males, but to ensure that the meat quality is maintained through the use of immunocastration in the weeks prior to slaughter. There's also opportunities to optimize profits by understanding the market dynamics and working out the best weight to sell your pigs. And there's great models to help you do that, where you input the feed costs and the matrix values that are being offered in terms of the pork being sold, and it will tell you the ideal sell weight for females, castrates, and entire males. And that may move. And if you are lucky enough to have multiple outlets for your pork, you can help use these strategies to optimize the profits. Now, functional ingredients often look expensive, but in reality, you need to ask yourself, are these ingredients costing you money or making you money? Reducing feed costs doesn't always deliver greater profits, and plasma is a perfect example of that. Plasma is, on paper, it looks like a relatively expensive ingredient, but as Yan Binh clearly showed today, it's a highly valuable ingredient, and it can deliver not only performance benefits, but health benefits and their whole of life benefits. And this value needs to be accounted for. However, it's really important for all different ingredients that we use that you evaluate their value and determine what the ROI of that ingredient is. In general, if you can use functional ingredients to enhance the performance of sows and young piglets, you have a fantastic chance to capitalize on these benefits throughout the life of the pig. And it's so important that you measure the performance in your farm so that you can fairly evaluate any of these functional additives that you choose to put in or take out. It's also important to think about the impact that that decision may have on other parameters. So if you, for example, were to take out plasma, would it influence the health or mortality and morbidity within the farm? Or if you were to take out betaine, for example, what influence will that have on carcass quality? You also need to think about if you make changes in terms of functional additives, what influence it might have on your days to market or stocking density, production flow, or cash flow. So, for example, if you took a growth promoting product out and your pigs took an extra 5 or 7 days to get to market, you may find that this upsets your production flow and puts more pressure in the system in terms of health and productivity. So in conclusion, we definitely are in some challenging times, but the reality is that challenging times always create opportunity. And I can say that after the last 3 or 4 years, the Asian industry is a very resilient industry. And whilst the times haven't been all that fun, we definitely are better for experiencing them. I would encourage you to use data to your advantage and make informed decisions as we move forwards, and to focus on the value rather than the cost. The key focuses need to be on precision of reproductive programs and precision of feeding programs. So we know that feed is the highest cost, but we also know that reproduction is the biggest profit driver. ASF has definitely accelerated change within the APAC region, but remember, no pain, no gain. There's a very bright future for pork production in the Asian region, and as Informa mentioned, there's good times ahead. But we're going to have to enjoy many more ups and downs as an industry as we go forward. And to do this, we need to stay focused and keep our attention on profit drivers. So remember that it's the value of feed, not the cost of feed, that we should be evaluating. We need to focus on productivity, and all the decisions we make should come back to this cost to produce a kilo of gain. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Megan. And right now, I would like to invite Mr. Ramesh, Dr. Yanbin, also to open the video. The time does not allow us to have much question, but thank you, Dr. Yanbin, already answer to the audience. There is few questions that I want to raise here to either Dr. Yanbin or Mr. Ramesh on the APC product safety. How APC can ensure that the plasma products is really safe from APC.
I can answer that. As Ramesh mentioned, we offer first options for our customer. We have 100% bovine plasma and 100% porcine plasma that we offer to different clients, and those are, we can guarantee those are just pure 100% species separated product. Number two, we took biosafety of product very seriously, and we have implemented multiple hurdle mitigation manufacturing process in our production process. As I showed you, those we have implemented the 3 steps, right? UVC, spray dry, and storage at room temperature. Those 3 steps all individually kills or inactivate virus of concerns. We build in those redundancy to fully ensure the safety of our product. Another thing I just will quickly mention, all the product we manufacture are all coming from ASF-free countries. So there's no chance of potential contamination with ASF. So
yes. All right. Thank you. The next question, Dr. Yanbin, I think probably you on can plasma be an option for antibiotic reduction or replacement program? What is your experience with that?
Absolutely. As you can see, especially in the nursery phase, when a lot of antibiotics were used or are being used today to control the GI tract or gut health, right? And plasma definitely can help to replace those functions. And some of the antimicrobial was used or currently being used for their anti-inflammatory effect as well. And plasma has a good effect on anti-inflammatory effect as well, which I did not show. Another thing I can share is some of the European experiences. Since 2006 and 2007, European country has removed antibiotics, big-grade antibiotics, and over the last since 2006 and 2016, our company in Europe has seen steady growth in plasma cells. We are seeing about the double, our volume in Europe because of removal antibiotic, which clearly showed, producer to see a value.
Yeah. Thank you. So I now come to Dr. Megan. The last question, like I saw the silver line is very interesting, business and way of life. Dr. Megan, can you leave some tips or the kind of the idea for the audience here that when there is a lot of situation happen like wars that affect the feed cost, and also with the disease that we still cannot fully 100% control, this kind of thing that affect the pig production. But as the nutritionist, feed formulator, do you have any suggestion on their lessen the worrying and try to work on the efficiency to control what they can do? Can you leave a good message to the audience today? Yeah.
So my advice is don't wait until you have a war or a pandemic or a disease outbreak to have a good look at what you're doing. Every day we should be recording the data and the performance and efficiency in our farm, and we should be making informed decisions so that we always enjoy good profits. But when times get tough, we are in an educated and a knowledgeable position to be able to navigate through the difficult times, because it's natural in agriculture to have highs and lows. It's about the preparedness of each of us within the industry to navigate those.
Yes, and ladies and gentlemen, I would like to now thank you to the APC team, Dr. Megan, as well for today's session. For those who has more questions, please feel free to reach to our APC members. And for those who wants the handout, please leave your email ID in the chat box. Ms. Thapani will do follow up, and the distributor and the sales team of APC in each country will reach to you as well. So ladies and gentlemen and all speakers, thank you very much for today, the fruitful session. And we hope you all enjoy the discussion and enjoy the presentation by our well-known speaker today. Thank you very much. ขอบคุณค่ะ
Thank you very much, Ms. Rose.
Thank you.
Your focus is the health and well-being of your animals. Manufacturing safe and effective ingredients that help your animals thrive is APC's #1 priority.
Hello, my name is Jerry Frankel, President and CEO of APC. As the world's largest manufacturer of spray-dried red cells and plasma functional proteins, we take our industry leadership role seriously. Our commitment to biosafety includes significant investments in our manufacturing process. We collaborate with leading biosafety experts. We use validated multiple hurdle technologies that help us to provide the industries we serve with safe, pure beef and pure pork blood-derived products.
To understand how red cells and plasma are made, you first must understand the scale of livestock production and that the collection of blood is a crucial part of the global meat industry. APC only collects blood from officially inspected 100% single-species meat harvesting facilities, either pure beef or pure pork. As an example, in the United States, the average large-scale pork processing facility will process 15,000 hogs per day, while beef processing facilities will process 4,000 cattle per day. These meat harvesting facilities are officially inspected by the government authority responsible in each country and must comply with strict requirements to ensure a safe food supply, and that includes only using blood from healthy animals harvested for meat. Let's review the blood and plasma production process and biosafety steps in place at APC's manufacturing facilities. APC sources animal blood from officially inspected pure pork or pure beef facilities that is hygienically collected from healthy animals during the production of either beef or pork meat destined for human consumption. Blood or plasma is collected and prepared for further processing. The process starts in our dedicated processing room, where the collected blood arrives via enclosed stainless steel pipes. APC's process is very similar to how the dairy industry collects milk. Blood or plasma enters a fully closed system, where it passes through our filters, may be centrifuged to separate the blood fractions, is then chilled and held in our insulated stainless steel tanks for pickup by APC. The raw material is then transported in species-specific tankers to an APC production site for unloading and processing. Blood is spun at high speeds through a centrifuge, separating the plasma and red blood cells. APC technicians carefully monitor our computer-controlled systems throughout the process. At designated manufacturing facilities, pre-separated plasma is treated with ultraviolet photopurification, which is very similar to pasteurization commonly used in food production. The liquid plasma is then pumped into our spray dryer. In the spray dryer, excess water quickly evaporates and the liquid plasma is transformed into powder. The product is spray dried to a minimum 80 degrees Celsius throughout substance. The bulk powder is precisely measured and packaged in only brand new totes or 25 kg bags and placed on new pallets. porcine plasma is then stored in environmentally controlled warehouses at 20 degrees Celsius for 14 days. The final step is quality testing products internally and through third-party verification prior to the product being released to our customers for use in animal diets. These multiple independent processing and safety steps all work together to ensure APC manufactures safe products for use in animal diets worldwide.
You can count on APC and our unwavering commitment to research, continuous investments in new technologies, and validated processing steps to ensure the safety of our ingredients. The APC team is here to help your business and animals thrive.